Goedemiddag allemaal. Hallo. Hey, ik ga beginnen met een whisky tasting voor jullie. En dat ga ik in het Engels doen, want er zijn een aantal mensen bij die niet in Nederland woonachtig zijn en ook geen Nederlands spreken. Dus ja, we gaan beginnen met Engels. Hi everyone, I'll be doing this tasting for you guys online in English today because some of you are either in Germany or the UK or some in Belgium, for which I do not know if you guys actually speak English. Sorry, Dutch. So I'll be doing this in English. Right. First of all, this is the first tasting I'm doing solo, and unfortunately, you cannot directly respond to me because it will take 15 or more seconds for me to actually see your response. So I'll be making some slight pauses in between drinks, and we'll try to answer your questions, if any, at that time. So let's just start out with the first slide I have, because I'll be doing this by slides. And for those who know me and who've seen some of my slides before, this is the first time they are not white. So normally I would start with telling you how to make whiskey and stuff like that, but because we're drinking 8 whiskeys now in an hour and a half, we don't really have time for that. So I've actually put a link on the screen here for you where you can download the slides on how to make whiskey if you need them. I'll give you about 20 more seconds to type that, and then I'll just continue with the official real slide. So hopefully that's okay. I'm just checking here if I'm actually online yet. And according to the stream, yeah, okay, there we go. Yay. Okay, now I can see myself live. That's cool. Right, I hope we actually got everything on there. So I'll be doing this in English just once more. I'll give you 10 more seconds to actually click on the link, or not click on it, but copy it if you need it. So there we go. Okay, first I'm going to tell you a bit about the history of Japanese whiskey. So basically it started just 101 years ago with the person called Iwai. He is actually a biology professor and also a chemical professor. And basically with the money he had from a kind of chemical and alcohol making company, he sent a guy called Takatsuru to Japan? No, oh my God, sorry about that typo. He sends him to Scotland, of course, to learn how to make whiskey at, amongst others, Springbank Distillery. And when he comes back to Japan in 1921, Mr. Iwai's company has turned bankrupt, so he can't actually make whiskey. But Mr. Takatsuru actually met a really nice girl in Scotland, and he took her back home and married her. Her name is Rita, which is, well, something important for him and also for the company that he later creates, but we're not going into that at the moment because it will take a bit too long. Well, just 2 years after the bankruptcy of Setsu Shuso, Mr. Iwai's company, the Yamazaki distillery was founded, and there was just one guy in Japan who actually knew how to make whiskey the Scottish way, which is Mr. Takatsuru, who enters into a 10-year contract with Kotobukiya, which is later called Suntory. And in 1934, his contract has actually ended, and he did not agree with the place where Yamazaki was actually built, because it's built in, well, near Osaka, and the climate there is nothing like Scotch. So the Scottish climate, sorry. So basically what he will be making there is a whiskey, but which probably will not be similar to Scottish whiskey that actually Takatsuru knew about. So since he wasn't, he didn't agree with the way, or at least the location on where to produce the whiskey, he quit and he started his own company later. So basically, the company he started is Dai Nippon Kaiju, and it started to produce apple juice and brandy to finance whiskey producing, and they started doing that in Yoichi, which is way up north in Japan. So the climate is much more like the one in Scotland, and that's why he actually wanted to create a distillery there. they started whiskey producing in 1940. So what happened to EY among that time? Well, in 1949, some of his ex-students who happened to be, well, sons and daughter of the Honbo family, who lived in Kagoshima, that actually mostly created a soju, which is basically Japanese vodka, they asked their ex-professor to come to Kagoshima and make beer for them because they wanted to start in the beer trade. But since EY actually is really interested in making whiskey, he said, okay, I'll do that. But, I will only do that if I can make whiskey as well. So he started making whiskey there in Kagoshima on a trial basis, and there's not that much known about that. We know he started in 1949, but we never, well, I've never seen any whiskey from that period basically produced or on sale anywhere. The only thing I've seen that actually came from the Kagoshima distillery was created in 1984, and the year that they actually closed. So, after the war in 1952, Dai Nippon Kaiju rebranded to Nikka because, Dai Nippon, Great Japan, after the war, that was a bit iffy. So, onwards to the 1960s, where EY is actually allowed to start a distillery in the Yamanashi district. Yamanashi is basically the wine country of Japan. It has some hills, and it could be, especially more in the hilly part, it could be a bit more like Scotland temperature-wise, but not really as much as you'd want to have it for, not ideal to recreate that whiskey. But EY was a big fan of the Islay whiskies, so what he created was heavily peated whiskey. But then again, the market actually didn't want heavily peated at that time. So, he kind of, his whiskey projects all failed. So he died in 1966, basically thinking he was a failure, but he wasn't really, because he is one of the founding fathers of Japanese whiskey, and due to him, we will be tasting some really fine whiskies as well, because he actually is the guy that sent the person from Nikka to Scotland so he could come back and work for Suntory and later his own company. Well, onwards a bit. In 1963, Nikka decided that they wanted to bring blends to the market as well, and getting anything from Scotland at that time was still difficult. So they needed to have their own grain operations, and they created those to make grain whiskey, which is different from malt whiskey and is different, created in a different way as well. They created a whiskey still based on the designs by Mr. Coffey, who is an Irishman, and they created that in 1963 in Nishinomiya, which is also rather near Osaka as well, and they basically used the same water as the Yamazaki distillery used for their whiskies. But then again, it also closed down in 1999, and they moved the stills to Miyagekyo, their second malt distillery. So basically, Miyagekyo opened in 1969, which is the second distillery for Nikka, and they're producing basically lowland and Speyside type whiskey because of the climate, and the mountainous area there is reminiscent to the one in Scotland for lowland production. And because Suntory didn't want to be held up, they opened a distillery as well in the Alps. So basically a higher positioned one to more imitate the Scottish environment as well. And they opened that in a very brilliant year of 1973. So in 1982, after the death of Mr. EY, Marsh decided that they wanted to try their hand at whiskey once more, and they built a new distillery in basically at the same water source as Hakushu does, only about 300 meters higher in altitude. So people are imitating each other in Japan, but hey, if it works, it works. And they opened the distillery just before the big economic crash, which was very lucky for us, because if they tried to open it just a tiny bit later, then we may not have actually have had any Mars whiskey at all. So in 1989, that distillery closed again, and the term for closing distilleries is mothballed. Basically, you leave everything intact, so you could start up operations again, but it's basically closed. So they don't do anything. In the early 2000s, we saw the rise of Japanese whiskey due to whiskies being sent to Scotland for international competitions and the Japanese actually winning things. That was kind of cool. And as a side note, in 2008, Ichiro Akto, a guy we talked about a bit more in our previous tastings, he started up a company called, a distillery called Chichibu, and they have a very high and very much sought after whiskey at the moment. So everything that we ever let you taste from them is basically, well, if you want to buy that now, you'll have to get some serious money. He funded his distillery by creating number one drinks together with a English and French partner. And what they do basically is they sold all the casks that were left from Hanyu and Karuizawa in Europe and other territories. And with that money, Ichiro could actually fund his distillery. So onwards to 2011, which is also an important date for us for the tasting today, is when the Mars Shinshu distillery reopened, and they actually brought their first malt to market in 2014, and it was named the first. The Okay. Oh, actually, it wasn't. Sorry. It was named Revival. Sorry about that. And they're now in 2020, which is this year, from 8 distilleries at around 2016, we move to have actually 25 distilleries in Japan in production for whiskey. And the second Mars distillery has its first malt, which is called the first for this one, released from their Tsunuki distillery, which is basically based on the site where the old distillery was. But hardly anybody working at Mars now still knows where the 1984 distillery was placed. So basically they don't have any clue where it was. The only thing they still have in operation is some very old-fashioned warehouses, and they look really cool, but they don't know where where the actual distillery site was. They figure it was probably on the same site that they rebuild it now, but they really don't know. So onwards to that, this was all my chit chat. Hear a thing about drinking whiskey, you can just read that. While you're reading it, I'm actually going to pour myself a whiskey. So don't mind me, just read now. So basically what I want you to have ready for your drinks, it's actually, you can get the one labeled one ready. Well, obviously the one labeled one. What you should have near you or beside you is something to neutralize your palate, like some white bread or some crackers or something like that, and maybe a bit of water and of course a glass. Okay, so let's start with the first whiskey. I'm gonna look at my watch as well because I've already blabbering about for a quarter of an hour, so we only have like an hour and 15 minutes left to actually taste all these whiskies. So let's start with the first one. Okay, basically what we're going to do is we're going to try 4 blends from Nikka. Then we're going to try a blend from Mars, followed by 3 single malts. One from Mars first, then a very special single malt from Akashi, and then finally we're going to drink a a sherry cask finished whiskey from Mars. Nikka Black is one of the first signature blends that Nikka actually produced. To build on that success from that blend, they decided to release several variations. The one is rich blend and the other is deep blend. The deep blend was supposed to be a bit more oomph to it because it will always be bottled at 45% alcohol. There should also always be a bit more of their own coffee grain in it because it is supposed to give a richer texture, a deeper texture than the normal blend they used as in Nika Black. It should also well, be more interesting, deeper because of the higher alcohol content. Um, Aside from that, there's, of course, you can read. So this blend should have a bit more wood influence and a bit more vanilla than the regular, well, the regular black. Unfortunately, I wanted to have the regular black at this tasting as well, but I couldn't because it wasn't available in Europe at the time. So I did have these bottles already in stock, so I could use those, but I could not get my hands on the regular Nika Black in time for the tasting. So sorry about that, people, because I would have loved to let you actually try all of those. Well, let's try this one first. It's a pleasant enough whiskey. It's a bit peppery in the mouth, and yeah, it has some. There you go. I see some new people watching. Right. Yeah, it also has some clearly wood and vanilla taste, as they actually say in the description. A bit more about Nika Black. It was originally offered at 39% alcohol in volume because that would be in a different tax bracket. So the tax would be virtually non-existent on it. While there is I think it's about 5 or 6% extra tax levy on spirits of 40% and higher in volume. So basically, in Japan, there is not a real rule about the percentage of alcohol whiskey should have. So they can actually offer you whiskey of 37% or even lower if they want to. In Scotland, of course, the whiskey needs to be 40% or more in alcohol, otherwise it can't be called whiskey. But the rules are more relaxed in Japan. However, because they started selling lots and lots of it abroad, they started conforming to Scottish regulations regarding whiskey. So basically, everything you'll be tasting tonight is at least 40% alcohol, and it can actually be called whiskey if you look at the Scottish regulations, because all of the whiskies that we're tasting here will not have extra like just spirit in it or cane sugar spirit or whatever. It's basically only grain, malt, water, yeast, and yeah, basically that's about it. That's the contents for whiskey. So it is real whiskey, all of it. However, like the most of the Nika offerings we're tasting tonight are not fully Japanese. They also use grain and sometimes also malt whiskies from Scottish and other countries' distilleries. In the case of Nika, it will be mostly Ben Nevis that's in there, but officially there is just Japanese whiskey in there, but unofficially, who knows? But yeah, that's about what I can tell you about this whiskey. Let's just have another sip or so. If you have any questions regarding this whiskey or want to make a comment, please do so on Facebook, because I cannot actually connect to you guys over Twitch because I don't have an account there. So just let me know and I'll just have another sip and then we'll move on to the next whiskey. The next one is this bottle here. And I'm going to switch over once this bottle is actually in your view. There we go. And actually, guys, before we go any further with even more alcoholic beverages, I would like you to, once we get to whiskey number 4, I would like you to not pour everything in your glass straight away. Just keep a little bit for later, because I'd like you to compare it with the final bottle that we're having today and see what the difference is. Basically, it will show between a blended whiskey and a malt whiskey. So that's why I want you to at least retain some of it. So, okay. What we're trying to do here, I see the, okay guys, I'm seeing a gray screen here. Yep, still turning gray. Okay. Yep, I'm supposedly I'm back again. Okay, that's good. Right. Okay. I saw the gray screen suddenly appearing, so I was like, "Ah, help!" Okay, but we're back. Okay. Basically what we're going to have you taste tonight is 4 limited editions. Well, actually 3 because the deep blend is a regular one, but there's 3 very limited editions of Nika Black. The second one we're trying tonight is the aromatic blend, and that was a spring 2017 release. It should be fruity and sweet. Um, Basically, this stuff is hard to get at the moment, if you still want to get it, because as I said, it's a 2017 release and it should all be basically out of stock at the moment. If you really want a bottle because you really like it, or for the next one or the one following that, do get in touch with me because I may have an address for you that still has some in stock for very reasonable pricing. So just let me know. Well, basically, as the title says, it's aromatic. It should be, yeah, fruity and sweet. So I haven't actually tried it recently. The last time I tried it was in 2017 when I actually bought my own bottles. So I don't know, people. So let's just try. Okay, if you compare it to the previous one we tried, it's very different. Even if the base for the malts and the grain whiskey is exactly the same as the deep blend, this one is quite a lot different than the previous one. It's more fruity, in my opinion, but it's just very different. So I find it hard to qualify the difference. What do you guys like better, this one or the previous one? I'm very interested in what your thoughts are regarding this. I'll just enjoy it for a while and just gonna read your comments there. So, yep. Okay, thank you for your comments, guys. What we're going to do now is, in a while, well, we have, yeah, we have some time. I'm just checking my watch here because we're very, we want to be completely on time with this tasting, and because it's live and stuff like that. And at Animecon, I usually, just take the piss on whatever time schedule there is and just do whatever I want. But since we're working with a lot of people together here, we kind of do need to keep to the schedule. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour the next one, which is this bottle here. Again, this bottle is from my own collection because the bottles I used for the tasting are actually completely finished. The only one I don't have anymore, so I have to do from memory, is the Akashi one. So I do remember what it tastes like, and I made some very serious notes about it. So I'm just want to hear you guys your thoughts on the Akashi one, because I'm going to tell you it's very peculiar and I think it's very interesting. Um, we do actually have 3 centiliters of that left for the Akashi one, but I'm not going to try it because just in case if one or two of the packages are lost in the mail, we do want to have at least some backup and get people what they paid for. So that's why I'm not touching the Akashi tonight. Well, we're on to the third one, the Nika Night Cruise. Yes, I know yellow. I have until 1940. I do know that. Yeah, but we still need to try 6 more whiskeys. So, uh, yeah, please bear with me. Okay, so this one is the one that's released in May 2019. I got a bottle of this from one of my friends in Japan, and I thought it was interesting for their blends, and especially for the price that you have to pay in Japan for it. So I got a couple more bottles, and we could use it for the tasting over here. Um, so basically, this blend has got a bit more Yoichi single malt in it, so it is slightly peaty. It's not very peaty, so but there is just a hint of smoke in it, and I hope you enjoy it because I think it's up to now the ones we've tasted. I like this. Have liked this one best, but I've never tried them all in a row, so maybe I'm going to have to review my opinion of it. But I'm just going to try a bit of it. Yes, and if you compare it to the aromatic one, it truly has a lot more pep to it. So it's yeah, I do think there is a night cruise. Sounds like a bad cop show. Yeah, it does. Yeah. Mm, okay, so basically, yeah, I do think there's a tiny bit of peat in it, and now that I've tried it after drinking the first two, I truly find it in the blend. But if you just try it as a first ever whiskey of the evening, you won't basically really notice the peat in it because it's just a tiny bit. But I do think it makes for an interesting blend. And for me, this is the most characteristic one from the set we're trying. But it's up to you guys, and because as whiskey is there is no wrong opinion regarding any of the whiskies. You can like it or you can't, and that's basically completely up to you. And yeah, there is no fault thing to like or not like in a whiskey. Although some people may find your opinion really weird, but that's okay. It's you, and you are you, and you're not me, so that's perfectly fine. And disagreeing on whiskey is one of the coolest things you can ever do, actually. So I'm gonna try this myself again. Yes, upon proper tasting, like especially the slightly bigger sip I'm taking now, I do have to say that the peat in it is a lot more pronounced than I thought it was, especially on the first few tries, or should I say first 2 bottles. Um, because I did drink this last summer, quite a bit of it in Japan, to be honest. Because as I said, it was really cheap. It was about 15 euros a bottle, and so I really enjoyed drinking that. Um, but yeah, that's just me, and I think it was a really cool summer whiskey. So now it's a bit dreary outside, and that's not really summery feeling, but you know. We're inside. I mean, I hope you're all inside and not raining, not getting rained upon. So, okay, just checking some more things here. Yes, it is actually sweeter, Martijn. Completely agree. Yeah. No, it's not a bad whiskey. Um, but yeah. it's still, it's an interesting whiskey in my opinion. So basically, there are three regular variations of the Nika. Um, Four, sorry, there are four regular variations of the Nika. There's the Nika Black, which is a standard and has been so, I think, from 1955-ish or 1960. It's a blend that has existed through most of the period that Nika has been opened. Then later they created a clear blend, so Black Nika Clear, which is basically something they wanted you to use for highballs and mixes. Then there is the Black Nika Deep Blend, which should get you, um, well, a higher alcohol content and well, a more grainy type of flavor. And the final one, and that's what we're going to try a variety of now, also not the original one, just the variety, is the this one here is the Black Nika Rich Blend Extra Sherry. And it's also actually bottled at 43%, so it's a higher alcohol content as well as the regular version, which is bottled at 40. This one is a limited edition from, I think it was autumn 2018. Yeah, it says here fall in my my collection too, but I'm not quite sure. It was at least from 2018. And I do want you to retain a bit of this in your sample bottle, because I want you to compare it with the final one later on in the tasting. So this one as well, this one should be a bit sweeter than all the others because it's basically has had extra maturation in sherry casks, and sherry should at least initially give you a sweeter overall flavor. As you may actually see, I'm not pouring complete drams here because I kind of want to be at least a bit sober when I'm talking to you. So I'm pouring about half a centiliter of each of these whiskies, just to make sure I can actually stay at least slightly coherent throughout the entire thing. Because drinking this many whiskies and actually drinking all of it in the hour and a half that we actually have for you guys is a bit much. So I'd rather not do that. So I'm going to at least, be be reasonable. Um, yeah, Yorick, actually, yeah, please keep a bit of that in the bottle. Let's just try this one. I haven't tried this in at least a year, so okay, this is completely, if you compare it with the other three, for me, this is a lot softer, a lot rounder, a lot easier to drink. This is one of those bottles that would really evaporate really fast if I keep it in within hand's reach, because you don't really notice that you're drinking 43% of alcohol. At least in my opinion, it's one of those whiskies that you could just pour and drink, and suddenly you notice that the bottle is half empty. It's one of those things that I try not to keep too much at hand, because yeah, just because of those reasons. So, what do you guys think of this one? So, let me know. Yeah, Robert. Yeah, I do agree with you because at the very first tasting that we had, the we had the I think we had the Yoichi and Miyagikyo 15s, and they also have lots of sherry in them. So yeah, I do understand your 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 reaction in this. I'm getting a bit of a cracker here to just neutralize my palate. Mm, Okay, well, I removed the mic for a bit because I don't need you to hear me crunch through a cracker. So I think it's a bit more, well, yeah, I agree with you, Yuri. I think it, um, well, I think the one reacting as Animecon is probably Jeroen. Um, just keep a tiny little bit in the bottle for the end, just so you can compare. Okay. Okay. Suddenly, let's just see. Mm, mm, mm. There we go. No, sorry about the delay here. Suddenly the live stream on my feed is gone, so I'm just gonna check. Just gonna be busy for a bit on my phone, being annoying. Sorry about that. There we go. Ah, okay, following the live stream again. Yay. Ah. Right, okay, guys. Matthijs also wants me to tell you guys that we still have 8 sets left and that we will be using them, that you can still buy them, and that we'll be restreaming this later. And I will be in Discord, the Animecon Discord channel, for you on a voice line to just directly talk with me about the whiskies. We don't know yet when, because basically we want to wait until the 8 sets actually get sold, and we want all the other people who do not have any whiskey now to have their whiskey at home, and then we'll rebroadcast, and then I'll be live for you guys at Discord to speak to about these whiskies. Hmm? Okay. Okay. Right. Okay. No, basically, it was just my own annoying phone actually kicking me off the live feed. So, yep, we're going to change to the first one, which is not a Nika one. It's a blend from Mars. Um, it was created for a chain store in Nagoya area. Um, The annoying thing with this one is that it's a bit harsh on the alcohol. It's 55% because it's bottled at batch strength. 900 bottles available for this one, and I actually got these through a shop in Germany. So yeah, I really love that store, by the way. Oh, I might have poured a bit too much of this. Yeah, it's Mars. That's what you get with me, at least. Okay, so what you'll probably notice is that this one is completely different from the first four, not just because of its higher alcohol content, but also because it has been aged in just only American white oak, which means that it has a lot more wood influences and a lot more vanilla influences, because that's what new oak does. If you have a new oak cask, it will always emit a lot more flavor to the whiskey than if you have a cask that you've already used. So an ex-bourbon barrel will still get all the vanilla, but it will get less of the wood influence into your whiskey, because a lot of the wood flavors and the wood extracts have already soaked into the bourbon that was in there previously. And basically what you get is the vanilla from the bourbon that's left, and just a tiny bit of wood if you use the ex-bourbon casks. But it's a lot safer to use them, because the thing with, if you use virgin oak, so new oak, and if you leave whiskey in there for a long time with the wrong climate, you will get a whiskey, basically you get alcohol that tastes like old wood, and that's not something you really want. But Mars is really good usually at the use of virgin oak. The way they mature things and the circumstances actually give them really, really super fantastic single casks that have aged over 20 years in white oak and are just phenomenal. Um, but yeah, this should be very, very different. Let me know if you have any other experiences than the ones that actually are on this sheet. This is also the final blend that we're doing tonight, so do let me know your opinion about which of the five you like best, because I'm very interested in that one. But what I really like about this one is also it's yeah. For this one, Yorick, you can put anything in the glass you like. It's yeah, alcohol chun on the label. No, it's not alcohol chun. It's basically the girl and also the guy with the lamp in the background and the turtle are all basically mascots of Sakaya Big, and especially the turtle. That thing is everywhere. If you've actually ever been in one of their stores, they have that turtle everywhere in the store. It's started to get really really annoying though, but it's okay. Yeah, well, Martijn, if you find it harsher, you should put a bit more water in it because it's basically the alcohol what you're finding harsher, and it is heavier than the Nika, yeah, Patrick. Yeah, because of the alcohol content, obviously, this one has 13% more, sorry, 12% more alcohol in it than the last one you tried. Mm, mhm. But because it is a bit much in alcohol and I poured a bit too much, I'm just going to throw this away. But since I obviously did not think that I was going to throw anything away, I have no real bottles to do that in. So there we go. Mm. So which one is the best for you guys? Hmm. It's a bit annoying that I have to wait 12 seconds at least to get any answers from you, but that's well, that's life, and that's basically it's Facebook that is keeping you guys waiting. Yeah, yeah. I feel something for both. The ones that I've seen now is Red Turtle and number four. And I agree with number four if you want to have an easy drinker. I think for me, the most interesting ones were number three and number five. So basically, the night cruise. In the night cruise and in the red turtle, I think those are the most interesting flavors. If you want to have a very smooth flavor, then I do agree with number four. But it's basically, yeah, it's one of those whiskeys that are easy to drink, but maybe a bit too easy to drink. Uh, okay. Okay. So basically, the feed just got reset for a bit because there was a stutter on the audio, and it should be remedied now. So, as I was very interested in your opinion, and thank you for that. Um, uh, is there any other opinions on whiskies which you like? Oh yeah, absolutely, Martijn. You're absolutely entitled to your own opinion. So, it's perfectly fine to think that number four is the best for you, and then that's great. It's yeah, can't disagree with that. And none of the uh, none of the whiskies I've actually tried tonight are completely shite. So, if I had any reason to disagree, that would only be the reason that if there was a really bad whiskey in the batch, and there wasn't. So, good. Sound is much better. Great to hear. Okay. Well then, we're gonna do the first single malt for tonight. This is a limited edition non-age statement from Mars. It's very fruity, and I would like you to ask before you drink this to actually have a bit of a cracker or whatever, just to make sure that you do not still taste the a bit harsher number five, because this actually does deserve a bit more attention, especially because the flavor will be really different from the previous one. When I tried it for the first time, it had a lot of melony type things going on for me. Yeah, I do realize that we have a lot of time. Uh, if you want to slow down a bit, that's perfectly fine by me, and I can just shut up and let you guys enjoy. So once everybody's ready for the first single malt that we're doing, just let me know on Facebook. I'll continue. And the first thing I'd like to hear from you is your impressions on sorry, oppressions, your opinions regarding the smell of this whiskey, the nose, basically. What do you think of the nose? What do you smell? I'd like to hear about that, if you may. And I'm gonna have another bit of cracker. Hmm. Interesting notice, Yorick. So, what kind of sake do you think it smells like? Yeah, they do. The Mars bottles do have that. Here is the bottle I still have, which again is my personal one. Um, you can, yeah. The thing is that I have for most bottles that in the tasting about this amount left, so about this amount. But I didn't want to touch them because I wanted to have them in reserve just in case that there's actually one or two lost. But yeah. Right. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I should have the. Yeah. Okay. Is it okay now? The microphone. I should have pulled it down. Okay, is it better now? Let me know, guys. I'll just wait a couple of seconds. Okay, thanks. Okay, so basically I'm gonna try it now. Yeah, for me, yeah, it's basically a muskmelon or what we call a cantaloupe here in the Netherlands and most of Europe. The orange melons, the ones that are really really sweet and meaty, that's what I'm getting here. But that's just me. And if you get any other flavor or whatever, that's perfectly fine because it's really really difficult uh, to actually. Um well for everybody to actually taste the same flavor profile in anything because it's always the things you need to discern yourself, and it can't always be the same as what I do. If it was, that would be very interesting though, because it never is. It's a bit more spicy, that's true. um But that's basically what marsh usually is. It's one of their characteristics to have a bit spice in the whiskey. That is because there is at least some peat in this whiskey. There always is in marsh. They do not really use unpeated whiskey, but you hardly ever taste it unless they put in the really, really heavy stuff. This was also partially aged in different locations than Hsinchu, which is their main location for storage, but they're not actually telling us where. Uh, they're telling us that there should also be anzu, so apricot, uh, muskmelon, ah, and orange marmalade, if I read the characters right. Cariña Meron. Bucariña Meron. I don't know what type of melon that is. But they call it the label green because apparently most of the fruits they're referring to should are also green. Okay, whatever. But yeah, okay, interesting. So yeah, just in case you haven't seen the label, this is the label of the bottle. Um, and this is still a really, oh, haven't seen the label, oh my god. Of course I actually put it on screen, that's stupid. Right, this is still available at about, usually about 120 euros a bottle. So it should still be available at some stores in the Netherlands, at least some in the UK and France as well. So it's an interesting bottle, I think. It's a lot more interesting than the one they had last year, which was basically just vanilla in a bottle and not interesting at all. Um, yeah. So, any other opinions on this whiskey? So, okay, we'll move on to the almost final one. Um, so I'm gonna let you guys try it, and I'm just gonna sit back and enjoy your comments about it. It's a whiskey that has been. Um, I think I actually wrote this wrong because I read later, after I wrote this entire thing, that it has been aged. The basically the cask that they used was a sherry cask that first contained whiskey, then contained Imo Sochu for 2 years, and then contain the liquid that's in this bottle or now in your bottle for 3 years in total. So there is no finish on a sherry cask. It has been a cask that previously contained whiskey, or sorry, first contained sherry, then contained whiskey, then contained soju, and now contained whiskey again. So I need to amend this slide. Um, but yeah, it's really weird in my opinion, and you really get the soju. If you know what emo soju tastes like, you will really get that flavor and at least the nose of that in your first smell of this whiskey. Because I do think it's interesting. That's why I added this bottle to it, because it's very uniquely Japanese and it's a flavor you will not ever get in any Scottish. And the whiskey is kicking in. Well, I hope not, Lex. I hope not. Um, yeah, rice at the bottle top. Yeah, maybe, but there is no rice ever used for this kind of whiskey. Emo is sweet potatoes. So basically, it's distilled from sweet potatoes, and it's well, there is an interesting thing to tell you about the sweet potato. Um, Basically, the Dutch are at fault for teaching the Japanese to produce liquor from potatoes, any kind of potatoes, because it's what we did once we arrived at Decima. We created Geneva from potatoes and other kind of grains and stuff. So basically, we experimented with well, making alcohol from potatoes and learning the Japanese how to do that. So I guess we're at fault. And that's also the reason why soju is so very much um, the staple drink of Kyushu, so the most southern island, where the Dutch were from the early 1500s, 1600s, sorry, until, well, basically 1860-ish. So, yep, this is basically we can be called the reason that the Japanese are actually making soju. So, unfortunately, anything you find at fault with this whiskey can be related to the Dutch. Ah, so we're at fault for making the Russians be alcoholics. Sorry, Russian friends, I didn't know that. Thank you, Martijn, for that lesson. Yeah, I do think it's a very interesting whiskey, guys. But you know, it's as I said, it's I'm not going to taste it right now, just because I basically don't want to want to have anybody not taste it at all if bottles get lost. No, I agree. When I opened the bottle for the first time, it says Martijn just wrote that this is weird. It doesn't smell like whiskey at all. I completely agree to that. When I opened the bottle at the first time, I was like, "What did I buy? Why did I buy this?" Was well, I bought it because I was intrigued and wanted to include it in the tasting. But it was really like, what help? But yeah, it does taste like whiskey though. Um, yeah, the acidity maybe. Yeri here says that I've smelled it more often on the white oak whiskies. The acidity maybe, but it's basically not this complex soju like Smell has not been on any white oak I've tried before, at least not on their whiskies. Mm. So, Patrick, extra sherry, how much is it at the whiskey company? Yeah, I agree with Matthias. It's very strange at first, but I that's why I also think it was very much worthy to include this, because it gives you a very different type of drink than all the others have done up to now, and that's what I always feel very interesting at. Um, Eh, Patrick, let me share a link with you later on, which gives it about slightly over a third, including shipping. Just don't worry about it. I'll get you settled with that. But regarding this whiskey, I think it's really good, um, to show a different kind of palate that can exist, and just by basically putting it in a barrel that contains something else, completely throws you off on the complete flavor palette that you can get from a whiskey. Um, that's why I'm also very interested in seeing what the Sakura cask heads do in the Tsunuki distillery. Last time I visited, they had three huge barrels. I think it's 300 or something liter barrels that were basically sherry casks. That had the heads, so the front and the back of the barrel, were actually from sakura wood, so Japanese cherry trees. So I'm very interested in tasting that whiskey if they ever do release it, because you know they sometimes don't, because this is an experiment that the master distiller tried. What I'm going to do, Yuri, is I'm gonna crack open mine later this week, and I'll give you feedback on it, where I think you're right on the flavor. So Yuri basically wrote that he doesn't have. It's a pity he doesn't have a regular Akashi single malt open to compare the Imo Sochu one with. I can do the comparison for you because I do have one. Um, and I'll get back to you. I'll get back on this stream later this week when I tried it. So yeah, I'm just going to give you an answer on that. Um, so we basically have 40 minutes left for just one more whiskey. And I am going a bit too fast here. Sorry about that. I should have done it in a more reasonable rate, but then again, I really didn't know how long it would take me. Sorry about that. Mm, let me see. Okay, so we still should move on to the final one. It's the double sellers, a whiskey from Mars again, and basically, yeah, well, you can read whatever that's on screen, and the 7-year-old I really wanted to have, but you had to enter a lottery in Japan, and I did not win anything. And later I could buy it on the secondary market for about 120,000 yen, and I thought that was slightly too much for it, so I didn't buy it. Um, so Matsui Mizunara cask. I don't know. I tried that one and I don't feel it tastes the same, but I don't have it in stock myself, so I really can't compare it anymore. But if they say so, I mean, it's perfectly fine for them to feel that it tastes like that. Um, Regarding this one, we're just gonna try the final bottle now. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, we're Ariana, we're comparing this one to number four. Smell like candy. Maybe it is a bit sweet. The flavor really isn't. I think, to be honest, that the sherry cask was a Oloroso one because it's a bit dry. And if I compare this for myself to the number four, it's definitely less sweet, well, in my opinion. But I'm very, very much interested in what you guys think. Um, Patrick asks if the Scottish whiskies there are usually 10 years plus. Well, they used to be, but then not mostly not anymore because also in Scotland they feel that the market is hugely growing. So uh, basically the amount of stock they have that's 10 years or older is getting a lot less than they used to. Um, but yeah, there's a very much different climate in Japan. Um, Mm, so yeah, that's basically the reason that Japanese whiskey can get released earlier more often than the Japanese one, because there is a big difference in climate. The climate difference is more in a larger difference between summers and winters in temperature, and the big shift in temperature also causes the whiskey to mature faster than it should. And the one in Yakushima, where one of the bourbon barrels is for this one is being matured, basically it matures about 2 to 3 times as fast as they do in Scotland. So yeah, a lot of Japanese whiskey can be compared at a younger age to a older Scottish one. Not always the case, but a lot of it can. Um, it's not always that it's either better or worse to let stuff mature for longer. It really depends on the whiskey and on the barrel used, because sometimes whiskey just needs to get out of the barrel at an age of 3 or 4 years, and sometimes it really, really should have been in the barrel a lot longer than it's been released for. So, um, Martijn says it also evaporates faster. It depends. In Shinshu, there is about a similar evaporation rate as in Scotland, but in Yakushima, it's about 3 times as fast as the one in Scotland. So evaporation rates 3 to 4% in Shinshu, if you want to know, and Yakushima is about up to 13% a year. So you lose 13% of your complete liquid inside a barrel every year, and that's quite a lot. So yeah, it does, but it also matures it faster. That's true. Mm, your cat is not impressed with the smell. Well, not all cats have good taste. It's mm, mm, mm. But yeah. So how do I suggest to compare it with the different one? Well, basically get a second glass and throw some in and try them. What you would see if you actually have two glasses and you drink them like a sip at a time. The weird thing is what you'll notice is that the harsher one, so the Mars one, becomes smoother, and the smoother one becomes a tiny bit harsher for you, because basically your sense of taste can't really keep them apart anymore, and will start drawing them together. And if you drink enough of it, so shot by shot, you'll notice that they will start tasting exactly the same, because at a certain time your flavor will start integrating both of them and start seeing them as the same flavor. But still, it's an interesting experiment to do. Yeah, I think that 4 is sweeter because they probably used PX sherry, Pedro Ximénez, instead of Oloroso that, in my opinion, they used for the Mars one. So the different type of sherry is also a very big influence on what the taste is. Okay, so this label is in English. It says you should taste bitter chocolate, apricots on the nose, citruses and cookies on the palate, with a subtle spiciness and saltiness. I don't know. I just taste sherry whiskey, but that's me. Yeah, I mean, Ariana, it's not difficult to get number 7. I think Drankdozijn has them, Drank Gigant, quite some other ones. Maybe actually your local um, your your local should be able to order it from Demonic Dranken. So if they have a contract with Demonic, and most of them do, your local liquor store should be able to order it for you. So it shouldn't be that much of a difficulty. Because I do try to always at least include 1 or 2 bottles that should still be for sale in the Netherlands. But sometimes it's not possible. So, what is your favorite whiskey of this evening? For from the Twitch channel, thank you for the feedback to Facebook. The Twitch, they asked if there is a game plan for production. For the first 4 whiskies, for the Nika ones, basically they are just special editions of their regular blends, except for the first one, which is a regular one, and that's sorry, somebody is going in between. Okay, basically, okay. Again, for the guys on Twitch, these whiskies, the first one is basically a standard blend that you can always buy. So the Nikka Deep blend is always available to buy. Number 2, 3, and 4 were basically special editions of their regular blends. So the game plan there is just to give the Nikka fans something different to try. They basically release something in May and in September each year, just a special variety of their blends. But the regular blends are always there, and the bottle 2 and 3 and 4 are basically just for their fans. Bottle 5, the Red Turtle, it was basically just released as a special edition for the Sakeya chain. So basically, they had just 900 bottles, a one-off release, a one-off try as well for that particular chain. They requested a certain type of wood management and a certain type and taste of whiskey for their liquor stores, so that's what they got. Regarding the Akashi one, those guys are just completely weird, and they try as many different casks as they can get their hands on. They're using bourbon casks, tequila casks, Cabernet Sauvignon, all kinds of other types of wine. They're using sake casks as well, some of which actually have contained aged sake as well instead of just normal one. So they have a real portfolio of completely weird bottlings, and they do not really seem to have a direction in which they want to produce stuff. They just produce whatever the beep they like. As for Mars, what you'll mostly see is what they do in bottle number 7 that we saw tonight, but there are variations in flavor. This is a special edition for 2019 in which they used an especially huge amount of bourbon barrels to make it taste more fruity, to get that special melony taste in it. That's what they wanted for that. But usually what they do, they usually produce stuff that's a mix of bourbon and American white oak barrels. So there is a certain profile they're trying to create. But since they only started back up in 2011, they're still searching for the perfect profile for them to get again. But you do see that they mostly use bourbon and American white oak for most of their releases. So a lot of them go into that direction, only just not as melony as the one that we have here. And the final one, like double cellars, that's basically them using a mixture of added bourbon barrels, sorry, added sherry barrels to the ones that they regularly use. So it's always a bit of an extra flavor in the double cellars as well. What is going on with Mars currently is that they're giving more importance to peated whiskies. So what you're seeing coming from their distillery is now mostly a mix of bourbon and American white oak barrel aged. So basically some vanilla and some wood spice added to a peaty flavor. I hope that kind of answers your question. And for Tsunuki, which is their new distillery, that distillery manager is still in his 30s. Like I think he's 32 or 33. And when in 2017, 2016, basically, sorry, he got the job of being master distiller. He asked the management what kind of whiskey they wanted, and the only thing they said is, "We want good whiskey." So he was like, "Yeah, but what kind of flavor profile?" And management said, "We want good whiskey, so whatever." So for that guy, he was like, "Thank you." But I think it's really cool that the management had so much trust in him to just let him do whatever he likes, as long as it's the whiskey that he puts on market for them is good. So I think that's really cool. Okay. Mhm. Okay. All right. So I'm now reading everybody's comments on Facebook regarding their best whiskey. Um, Herring casks. Yeah, well, I'd love to do that. I'd love to try it. But yeah, you have to basically be German to be allowed to do that. And who doesn't get the comments? Basically, the guys from Cadenheads in Berlin, they bought a quarter cask of Lafroig new make and they matured it on a herring cask and then sold it. And they did the same thing with a Speyside whiskey, which they matured on a Kirschwater cask. So those guys are completely weird. It was basically called Fishki, not Fishy. So, oh, sorry, that was again a Facebook remark saying that's fishy, but no, that one with the herring cask was actually called Fishki, and you can probably still find it if you just search for Fishki and Cadenheads on Google. But these guys are completely weird. New Japanese distillers, are there any recommendations? Well, I think that the new whiskies, except for the peated one from Matsui, are interesting. So the ones that Ariana said, the Sakura cask and the Mizunara one, but I think they're still way too young to put to market. I think they should have waited at least 2, 3 more years to put those on the market. What is very interesting is Akeshi, not to confuse with Akashi, but Akeshi. They're in Hokkaido, so the northernmost island, on the complete opposite of the island as Yoichi is, and they are producing everything with completely Japanese ingredients, Japanese water, uh, Japanese grains, and basically the yeast as well. It's all completely local. They even had their own fields of malt, of barley, before they started distillery. So I think they're onto something there. It's very interesting what they produce. Only it's extremely expensive because they release everything in 20 centiliter bottles. So getting those is difficult, but if you can, they're always very expensive. Another one to look out for, in my opinion, is Nagahama. Their new make was extremely well made, and they just released their first whiskies. They're not in Europe yet, but I think it's very interesting to keep a close watch on what they're doing. And finally, I would have to say Gaia Flow or Shizuoka Distillery. What they're doing is they have the old Karuizawa stills in that distillery. They bought them and they refurbished them, and they're using them to make whiskey again, aside from 2 other ones. It will be a bit easier to get their whiskies in Europe because the Scottish firm Blackadder, they invested quite a lot of money in their distillery, so they will probably have the sole right to sell that stuff in Europe. It should be at least a bit more affordable than those coming through Number One Drinks or La Maison de Whisky, which at least I hope it is, because basically for a bottle of Mars, if that you buy in Europe, you pay up to 3 to 4 times the price than what you actually pay in Japan. So I hope that Blackadder is being a bit a bit nicer to us Europeans. So, any other questions, guys? Because I'm basically out of bullshit. So, yeah, I'd love to. There's a question on Discord. If I'm going to organize another Japan whiskey trip, I'd love to do that. What I'm basically looking at is doing one in February. if at all possible, because well, the Chichibu Whiskey Matsuri is in February, and it's the whiskey festival to be at. So I hope it's being run. The thing is that I do know the main organizer of the festival, so even if it's sold out, the people traveling with me to that festival will be sure of getting tickets for it, so we can always go there if we go in February. And there's also at least two and probably four Japanese whiskey bars that I know the owner of, who will make sure that we will get one afternoon exclusive for our group to drink whiskey. The thing is that we do need to be drinking whiskey there and not just get like one glass and take all afternoon with it, but it's meant as a, well, basically uh, try our stock and try as much as you like, but do pay for it. Otherwise, it's sometimes very difficult to get into these bars, or at least get into the bars with more than one or two people. And what we're going to do is we're just going to have those bars for ourselves. So at least that's some of the stuff I can arrange. So yeah, just keep track of what I'm doing. I hope to get an update for you, and I would love to love to go with you guys to Japan in February and make sure that we see lots of cool stuff and do lots of cool things in there. And yeah, yeah. So basically, yes, on that whiskey trip idea. So any further questions? Whiskey tasting in Japan. Well, that's not that difficult, you know. I can let you all just buy a bottle and we can just come together and discuss stuff. You know, it shouldn't be too difficult. And we can also combine that with an onsen trip if you really want to. But yeah, that may be a bit difficult, more difficult though. Trying to visit Chichibu. Um, yeah, if you want to come with us, basically as a private person, you're not allowed to visit Chichibu, but if you know the right people, you can arrange a tour, but not just for one person. So it's yeah. If you want to visit any of the Japanese distilleries, the smaller ones, then going with us in February is probably the best possibility to visit those. The larger ones you can just book online, but the smaller ones are sometimes not possible, or only if you book through people that know the distillers. So and this yeah, just as I said halfway through and in the beginning, we still have 8 sets left. They are for sale, and I will be on Discord. Yes, on Discord, in a voice channel once again. When we're gonna run this online thing again at that time, and then I'll be there to discuss the whiskies with you live. And hopefully there's a bit less lag, not the 12 seconds that we have on Facebook. So yeah, please let me know, and yeah, that's basically it. 3 trips to Japan in a year is a bit much. I don't know. Why is it a bit much? I mean, if you have the money for it, it shouldn't be an issue. I've done 3 or 4 trips a year before. So if there are no other questions, then I'm just gonna enjoy my drink, and hopefully, well, in 10 minutes there will be a bit more information for you from Jeroen, and maybe I'll be there as well. At least Jeroen asked me to be online, and yeah, just let me know. Yeah, petty is if you don't have enough money to go, you can always sell one of the kids or a kidney or whatever. It's. Um, so I've been asked to talk for 10 more minutes. I don't mind. If there anything you'd like to have more information about? Ah, yeah. Okay. Then there is yeah. Patty says that not having kids already saves a lot of money. Um, yeah, it does. Um, and there's always the bank that you can convince that you really, really need this extra money. Um, yeah, okay. Now, Patrick, I'll get you the answer in private. Just give me some time. That's going to be arranged. Patrick wants to know where he can actually buy one of the bottles, so I'm going to tell him shortly. So 10 more minutes. What is there to do? Anybody have some other questions about traveling to Japan, maybe? In the Netherlands, a good whiskey bar to visit. The Malt Vault in Utrecht. If you want to drink a lot of Japanese whiskey, then behind bars in Utrecht. And there's a pretty good one in Arnhem, but I don't know if they have that much whiskey left anymore. Um, yeah, let's just see. There's one more question. Ah, yeah, for Amsterdam, there's L&B, and I think the one in Arnhem is called Hollywood. I believe it is, yeah. What will you do for future whiskey tastings? Well, I'm actually giving a Mars tasting later on in this month, but that's completely sold out, and we'll be doing a bit more of the more expensive Mars ones. But I was actually hoping to get 10 people to join me on that adventure, but it will be 22. So yeah, yeah, that's going to be a tricky one. But yeah, and I'd love to do a further whiskey online tasting for more people. But yeah, they just have basically need to contact me if you have a group of people that would like to do a whiskey tasting either at home or online. I'm always there. At home is going to be difficult for us. Sorry, at home, but at someone's place is going to be difficult for a while because of the 1.5 meter distancing we need to take into account. But yeah, I'm certainly willing to do any whiskey tastings. What are Japanese bars like? Is sake cheaper than beer, for example? It depends. Sake can be really cheap. There are some sake-specific bars that get you a drink of sake for 100 yen, well, 110 including tax. But there's also places that can get you a jug of beer for 200, 280, but it really depends where you're going and what quality of beer and what quality of sake you like. Overall, beer is, if you want real beer, so actually made according to the German Reinheitsgebot. So that's not cheap in Japan because there's a lot of extra tax on that kind of beer. If you want beer that's basically kind of tastes like beer but is not really beer, then it can be a lot cheaper than sake. So, but yeah, if you go to I've heard of a bar in Tokyo that you have to pay like 1,000 yen and you can get 10 different sakes. So, but I haven't been there, so I don't know about it. Um, there's a question here on Facebook for how much a trip to Japan would cost. Um, If it's a regular one, depending on if you want to spend how much time you'd spend, um, let's just say you would like to go for 3 weeks and have a Japan Rail Pass for 3 weeks as well. Uh, just for the trip alone and the hotels and the Rail Pass, you should think up to 2,400-ish euros. But that's, yeah, maybe a bit less. It could be about 2,000, but that's basically the bare minimum I would say that will cost us to spend in Japan for 3 weeks. Um, Malt stock. Uh, the chance for malt stock to go on is basically they can't say yet. Maltstock is an event that's basically a weekend long of drinking whiskey, um, uh, with a barbecue there and an entire buffet on on the other day, and 2 times a complete Scottish breakfast, including haggis. It's really cool to go to. The question is if it actually continues this year. It's in September, and basically what needs to happen is there needs to be a relaxation of the 1.5 meter distancing rule. If there is, then they will continue. If there isn't, then they can't. They can't tell you yet if they're continuing, basically because of the same reasons we had to wait and with announcing for Animecon to continue, yes or no. They need to have an okay for their partners to either cancel, yes or no, and they have to wait until the official government regulations for that month, so they can't tell you yet. Mm, um, uh, um, okay. Trips I organize, would I be organizing the complete trip or would we be organizing our own and just join the tours you organize? For the trips, if it's the whiskey one, I would organize the complete trip. Uh, there will be different paying periods, one for the flights, and usually the hotels need to get paid on site. Um, but yeah, basically I would organize the entire trip because it's easier, because then everybody will be arriving at the same time and departing at the same time. You can of course organize your own thing, but then I would need to request a certain amount of money from you, because to be quite honest, I'm getting trying to get 10 people to join me on this trip, and your total cost would be 10% above your regular costs. So my trip will basically be free in exchange for organizing everything. So that's just me being completely honest regarding that. Um, yeah, if you'd like to discuss whiskey or Japan with me on Discord, or whatever, I'm perfectly fine to schedule some time in there at some point. But I do not have that much free time, mostly. But the stuff can be arranged. It's not a problem. So let me know, and basically it's best to contact me through Facebook if you want to arrange something on Discord. Sorry about that, but I just don't have Discord open that much because I'm really annoyed with the phone app, so I don't use it. So any more questions or anything else related, do let me know. Mm, okay. Yep. A good whiskey to get for your whiskey-loving boyfriend. It depends. What does he drink in Scottish whiskey? Um, if you can let me know that, then I can let you know what a good whiskey would be. I just need to know a couple of the brands that he or she or whatever drinks, and then I can recommend some a good whiskey. But if you're just talking quality wise, usually it's no hardship to buy anything from Mars as long as it's single malt. So everything that reads Komagatake or Tsunuki, that would be perfectly fine. If you want a cheaper segment, the non-aged Nikka Yoichi or Miyagikyo would be fine. The Yoichi if he likes smoky whiskey, the Miyagikyo if he doesn't. Yorick didn't know about the Mars tasting. I posted that on a Facebook group on whiskey, and I posted it on my personal Facebook. So if he likes Artback, then yeah, definitely Yoich. Or if you would like to spend a bit more money, but that's really big, then try to get the new Tsunuki aging bottle from Mars, because that also has quite some peat in it. So okay, they asked me to wind up now, so I'm basically going to say goodbye to you all. Thank you for your attention. And yeah, you can always contact me through either Facebook, or if you know my phone number, you can always call me or leave a message on Discord. And if I actually do connect to Discord, I will get back to you straight away. So don't worry about it. Just let me know if you have any questions. I really don't mind answering them. Only don't expect me to do so within the hour normally. Anyway, it was great to talk to you guys and great to do this tasting, because I was, well, really annoyed that we couldn't do one for Animecon this year. So I'm very happy that we could do it. And please be reminded that we still have the 8 sets left. So if you have somebody who you think should experience this as well, do let us know and we can send you the set. Okay, guys. That's all for me. And well, thank you for being an audience, and a very responsive audience as well. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.